let's take a trip back in time and enjoy some WallStreetBets trades that deserve to be remembered forever. Which I admit is ironic, because while cleaning up my folders, I found this entire dank trade script that I wrote up and then forgot to produce before I moved on to other projects. But luckily there's no such thing as a legendary WallStreetBets trade going stale. It's time to dust off these tomes and start etching these tales into the annals of WallStreetBets history so that these extraordinary trades are never forgotten. Boys and girls, it is my honor to bring you the dankest trades of Throwback Thursday. We're going to start things off with something we typically don't see on the internet: a woman. Named Toro Beb, this young woman appears to have done a significant amount of stress eating during the 2020 lockdowns, gaining weight uncontrollably fast. But she has since recovered by using an exotic method of weight loss called diet and exercise. So congratulations to Toro Beb on her strong glow back game. But this weight loss was only step one of her post-lockdown renewal plan. As a part-time social worker, baby Toro only made about $15,000 a year in take-home pay, leaving her largely impoverished. Further, with the inflation hitting hard, she needed monetary gains, lest her destitute condition only get worse. Luckily, through her career as a social worker, Toro Beb was exposed to information on cutting-edge medical testing for the development of new drugs. One in particular caught her attention. A company called Sealos Therapeutics, ticker SEEL, or SEAL, expected to complete a phase 2 clinical trial on a ketamine-based anti-suicide drug that is administered straight up the nose like liquid cocaine, or ketamine. This exciting drug candidate put SEAL on the cusp of a major source of fresh revenue. Trading at only $1, dropping stacks into SEAL shares was the obvious choice. No doubt, an effective anti-suicide medication would be in high demand, especially among young Gen Z and in Russia and Korea. In mid-September 2023, she slapped down about 16-month salary on cheap shares, just before clinical trial results were due to be released. Surely, SEAL would announce outstanding results, sending its stock soaring over the moon. On September 21st, SEAL announced the exciting news. The drug worked wonderfully, with 0 patients dying during the trial, and better than expected results for at-risk patients. However, there were 2 problems. The first was that a side effect of this anti-suicide drug was twice the placebo rate of suicidal ideation, which is explicitly the opposite of this drug's intended effect. The second problem was that the company ran out of money to pay its clinical trial patients, leading to 73 out of 220 subjects quitting the test early. This prevented the study from reaching adequate sample size, invalidating the phase 2 trial, and also indicated the company was so broke that it couldn't even afford to run a clinical study. As a result of the botched trial, SEAL stock dropped 75% overnight. Toro Beb's position and a year's salary was ganked. Her mental health was clearly impacted, as she was most recently seen writing poetry, a sure sign of internal struggle. But the fight for SEAL was not over, and their next anti-Alzheimer's drug worked great on monkeys. However, this got them only as far as presenting a poster at some school science fair, after which point they had to do a 1-to-30 reverse stock split just to remain listed on exchanges. And then the stock cratered back down to $1 anyway. This one, we're gonna call an L. Hang in there, Beb. It's not like you lost a lot of money or anything. Now, let's check out the hottest tournament since Globo Gym 2004. Legendary WallStreetBets trader Sir Jackalot stopped fapping long enough to create Stonk Madness, a free stock-based ladder tournament that mimics the adrenaline-fueled feel of everyone's favorite basketball contest. Take your shot and put together a bracket 100% free. I've got number 2 seeded Coinbase going all the way and defeating 14 seeded Crocs in the big game to take home the trophy. Strong brackets have a lot to look forward to with some killer prizes, with a no-kidding Lambo for a perfect 63 wins, down to 42 if enough brackets get created. Outside of a perfect bracket, the winner will take home a litany of prizes from $1,000 of McDonald's to a Tesla Model 3. The next top 10 are on deck for AirPods, consoles, and other goodies, while numbers 11 through 20 collect a WallStreetBets figurine. The more brackets get created, the larger the prize pool gets, with matchups like Coinbase versus Robinhood and AMD versus Nvidia going head-to-head in the first round. Cinderellas are sure to break some brackets as we strive for the grand prize of a Lamborghini Huracan. This is a 100% free tournament and you've got nothing to lose. Let's have some fun at stonkmadness.com. And if you're craving some degeneracy after dark, check out Jackalot's app After Hour with over $200 million of verified positions on the line. Now, let's get back to the WallStreetBets madness with throwback trade number 3. In 2019, while wallowing in a Swedish prison for fighting people outside of a burger joint, rapper A$AP Rocky went through self-reflection. He determined, OGs paved the way. I'm just following the blueprint. A$AP Rocky's homage to the OGs mirrors the sentiments of those WallStreetBets users who have seen the sub grow and evolve through its humble origins, through its flop phase during the meme stock era, and finally as it carved its way toward actually being good again. But through it all, the sub's original motif never fully faded. WallStreetBets is a sub where we seek those huge gains, even at the risk of our options dropping 99.8% with no bid. And no one exemplifies this theme better than user Silfvanas. As a longtime Redditor and WallStreetBets OG, Silf spent a lot of his early, presumably teenage years, posting about streamers, dropping cringe jokes, and discussing some video game called Hearthstone, which features the character Sylvanas Windrunner, which is probably where Silfvanas comes from. But our man matured and recognized he was getting no engagement on his jokes, and therefore a future career as a comedian was never meant to be. So instead, he pivoted to something more enticing: WallStreetBets. In the autumn of 2018, Silfvanas shared some of his earliest trades, which included approximately $3,000 positions on Tesla, Amazon, and Nvidia. These were good stocks to buy when Nvidia was trading for about $65 on a split-adjusted basis, and Tesla at an $18 split-adjusted basis. But the very concept of holding good stocks for years is antithetical to our needs. Realizing the power of FDs after flipping a $3,000 Amazon put position to $7,000 in 3 days, Silf embarked on a half-decade struggle to stack paper through such aggressive means. What follows is a roller coaster from Wall Street hell, in which each gain is cancelled by an equally devastating loss. Made money on Facebook, got cooked by the Zuck a week later. Finally have a good year? Don't buy shares, just YOLO into more positions until you lose it all. Silf suffers from such an aversion to gains that he is clinically unable to take profits, a matter deserving of investigation by the UN Human Rights Committee on Economic Affairs. Facing these woes, Silf tried exotic methods of trading, including inversing himself, i.e. placing the opposite trade of what he thinks is the right move, and then he inversed himself inversing himself, which also didn't work, and then he inversed this move, at which point you're not really inversing anything, you're just guessing. These methods were ineffective, and in September 2023, our man lamented that he has not made a single good trade in months. Last year, Silf grieved that he had lost 80 grand by autumn 2023, and he only had 20k left. If he held his most recently shared position until expiration, he'd be down to just some dust left over on the bottom of his desecrated portfolio. Since there are no gains to speak of, this 80k loss appears to be all his own money from actually working. Silf has spent the last several years working for the man, then dumping his salary into options and losing it all, without fail. At no point do I see any evidence of things like learning from one's mistakes from Silf. And for that, I raise a toast to Silfvanas, the most habitually unsuccessful trader of this entire WallStreetBets era. If that's not OG WallStreetBets, I don't know what is. And Silf, I recommend the ticker VOO. Just hold it and forget it. You're clearly not cut out for speculative trading. Consider sticking to video games, my dude. Now, let's check out Throwback trade number 2. Next up at the parole board is a really swell character by the name of Interaction Fun 5368. Before his corruption as a WallStreetBets user, our man joined Reddit at the very end of 2022 to discuss movies and video games like a pretty normal guy. Likely unfamiliar with Reddit, Fun Man passionately replied to several conversations about the Quentin Tarantino movie Hateful Eight approximately 1 year after the conversations ended. A recent college graduate at the time, the big dog appears to have had better things to do than post on Reddit all day. But young adulthood is a dynamic time in life, and Interaction Fun sought to manifest his rise to prestige. However, the hotshot was too cool for school, declaring college his worst investment in life, almost certainly indicating he was getting a poor ROI on his education. With Visual Mod's warning about college expenses coming in a few years too late, Funny decided that if he wasn't going to get a return on his expensive but worthless degree, he would seek indemnification elsewhere. And what better place to make a rush toward generational wealth than the stock market? After gaining a rudimentary understanding of options by watching YouTube videos and browsing our favorite sub, Interaction Fun performed an extensive evaluation of the market environment. He determined that Theta Gang had an edge over the average schmuck and used VIX as a measurement of when to enter positions. A wise, calculated approach. However, selling exotic spreads like iron condors is an advanced options method. Despite his best intentions, our man was in over his head and outside his element, as evidenced by his odd and improper use of trading jargon. Nonetheless, the funny guy began his adventure with a respectable $32,000 earned through good old-fashioned labor, putting student loan repayments on the back burner. Cracking open Robinhood, the recent grad put in his bid for Theta Gang membership by selling puts on DWAC. At the time, DWAC was a highly volatile Trump-affiliated de-SPAC that appeared to be bouncing back after a meteoric rise and cataclysmic drop. The prospective parent company of Truth Social was anything but a sure bet, and as such, put premiums were sky high. By selling boatloads of cash-secured puts, the brilliant young man raked in a consistent $500 to $1,000 per week. Once he had built up his cash pile enough to sell puts on, quote, the SPY, our man abandoned DWAC and made the switch to the bigger ticker. But with his bankroll, Interaction Fund only had enough cash to cover one short put at a time, and the gains were much lower than his ambitions required. To really get that premium flowing, he decided to sell $1 wide iron condors. Or as he eloquently put it, I then realized I could do an iron condor and sell credit spreads on calls as well. I sold spreads $1 apart in strike and put up $100 in collateral for each iron condor chain. This poor description is also ambiguous because it's unclear if it's the body of his condor or the wings of his condor that were $1 wide. However, I'm not sure if he'd know what those terms mean anyway. Determined but beyond his expertise, it was not long before the novice had his ass to the fryer. In mid-December, the enterprising young man was riding his unspecified 0-day to expiration iron condors when SPY took a dump at open. The dip had SPY skating along Funny Boy's short put as the hours ticked by with expiration looming at market close. With the condor in the red, risk of SPY landing between the short and long puts was significant and could leave our trader in a nasty spot. To spare themselves from another Irony Man scenario, Robinhood executed its risk management policy and liquidated Interaction Fund shortly before market close. $9K had evaporated immediately, but the Theta applicant was still in the game. He took note of Robinhood's risk management procedures and jumped right back in with both feet. On a tight condor that Wednesday, our guy got lucky as SPY landed softly in the body of his condor, granting him a massive $25,000 return like it was nothing. The $9K loss was clearly just a fluke, and Funny Guy's confidence reached a pinnacle. The following day, the rising star modified his condor by adding put credit spreads only, anticipating a market rise after Tuesday's big dip. He nearly full ported into put credit spreads expiring that Friday, maxing out his account's liquidity for an end-of-the-week Santa Claus rally. But the huge bet aggressively turned against him as SPY began tanking at the opening bell and quickly pierced his credit spread, as his account capsized below 25K, putting him at risk of day trading restrictions. Our man dipped into his bank account and topped up another 10 grand. It was all for naught. On Friday, with his spreads just hours from expiration, the market continued to sink, pushing him deeper into the red and dusting his prior day's deposit. Having already maxed out his instant buying power limit for the week, depositing more to free up liquidity was no longer an option. With the bears already pressing their grisly weight into our man's fragile position, Funny Guy tried desperately to roll his expirations to the following week, even paying a debit where he needed to. But Robinhood struck for the second time, slapping him with a day trading restriction and preventing him from trading further except to close his positions expiring that day, and as he put it, accept the loss of collateral. On Monday, he woke up to blaring red letters on his screen that served him his papers, a $4.4 million margin call. Reality hit hard. Funman thought he was ruined. This is a story we've seen before, with Robinhood telling people they're indebted for life. Those of us in the know are aware that this is just how Robinhood tells you to exercise your long puts and take the 100% loss. It's really not a good way for Robinhood to communicate this, but you're not actually $4.5 million in debt. But Interaction Fund was a novice and didn't know this. He spent hours waiting for Robinhood's support to bail him out. Ultimately, he did escape with his skin intact, but his $40,000 bankroll was dissolved. The appropriately named user, Funny Associate, who has since been suspended, leading me to believe that he's actually Interaction Fund in disguise, lamented with our hero's story. According to Funny Associate, Robinhood cheated Interaction Fund out of his money by using unspecified, unethical tactics to turn his profit into a loss. Allegedly, you're not allowed to make money on Robinhood unless you're a hedge fund, and all others will need a lawyer. Interaction Fund strongly agreed with this assessment. I am pretty positive that our guy just made an alt to reinforce his own dissolution with the platform. To add insult to injury, he consulted Reddit for relationship advice after suspecting that his girlfriend was cheating on him. It turns out that she was actually cheating on her real boyfriend with him, and Funny Guy was just the side piece. Which, I'm gonna be honest, really does not sound quite as bad as the opposite, in my opinion. However, he does appear truly hurt by this. A year later, Interaction Fund shared an update to his situation. Shortly after burning his life savings on The Spy, he also lost his job and had to move in with his sister and her 4 preteen kids. After 6 months of suffering this indignity, our man moved back in with his roommates who kept his rent balance on margin. After another 6 months of scraping by, Funny Guy was finally able to get a decent job and was well on the road to recovery. He says he has slowly and steadily been rebuilding his portfolio for long-term gains, leading us all to think he was talking about an S&P 500 ETF. But he was really talking about Fubo, into which he continuously dumped his entire deposit every single month. As of this writing, he's down another 25%. You're so close, man. Just pick a ticker closer to the end of the alphabet. Now, the moment we've waited for. The top trade of Throwback Thursday. According to ChatGPT, in the year 1919, philosopher Mohandas Gandhi started live streaming, and the chat filled up quickly. Gandhi preached, "If you continue to relentlessly buy FDs, you deserve to lose your money. Act like an adult and buy shares of undervalued stocks like Warren Buffett and make money consistently." Although the validity of this story has been called into question, no one can doubt Gandhi's wise words. As WallStreetBets has repeatedly shown us, the exotic financial instruments called shares do most of the heavy lifting in serious portfolios. But does that mean you have to buy and hold indexed ETFs for 40 years so you can die rich? No. No one does that shit. Especially not the hardcore trader with the savage name of Standard Kill Chain. Evidence seems to indicate that our man is a 35-year-old introverted cybersecurity programmer, as indicated by him sharing a guide to some computer nerd stuff, including GitHub, keyboards, and INTJ personality tests. He also wrote a Selenium script to help someone perform a denial of service attack on a conservative Texas group that gets almost no engagement on its articles. The name Standard Kill Chain itself may be a reference to the cyber kill chain for targeting threats in the cyber domain, like ransomware hackers. In any case, the quiet killer appears to have joined Reddit at the very end of 2022. In fact, his first post, in which he asked for advice about whiskey, was barely a week after Interaction Fund blew up his account. But unlike some of the more casual types who stumble into WallStreetBets after months of normal Reddit use, Standard Kill Chain went elbow deep in our beloved sub right off the bat. Not that he had anything particularly novel to add, I think he was just happy to be part of the conversation. After all, there's no evidence that this fast-paced, high-risk environment is Kill Chain's typical scene. Instead, he appears to achieve zen as a remarkably avid runner who manages his type 2 diabetes through a strict diet and by running multiple marathons per week. He spends most of his time, and I mean legitimately the majority of his time, galloping past trees and animals in national parks. In fact, his comments seem to indicate that he is a digital nomad, a rising class of people who work and live on the road. If they do own an actual house, they don't spend much time there. So much so that Kill Chain spent over 9 months living in his Tesla with his dog, driving coast to coast visiting national parks. Doing remote cybersecurity work while living as a gentrified homeless person was fruitful for Mr. Killer. His high-end earnings combined with his minuscule expenses allowed him to extensively invest. He appears to have a penchant for dividend stocks, but somewhere in the forest of a man's heart, there's always the desire to aim big. With a robust portfolio of about $200,000 in December 2022, our man turned his sights to beaten down meme stocks that had been pimp slapped in the year's bear market and were now undervalued. I think what Kill Chain is trying to say with this oddly phrased comment is that if a stock has overwhelmingly negative sentiment on social media, then the bottom is in and it's time to buy. By December 7th, Carvana, ticker CVNA, had suffered a devastating stone-cold stunner during the filthy bear market that year, and was then trading for about $4, a horrifying 99% loss from its peak at over $360 during the COVID bubble. The stock was priced for bankruptcy, and rumors of its downfall snaked their way into every nook and cranny. But Kill Chain was not convinced by the negative sentiment, and believed the vending machine car company was severely undervalued. Specifically, he identified that although Carvana revenues were down, all of its bad financials were from this presumably one-time, unusual items segment of its expenses. Without that $2.893 billion expense, its $2.894 billion loss on continuing operations would have really only been a loss of $1 million, its best quarter ever. The writing was on the wall. That day, he shared his highly contrarian trade, never bet against bankruptcy Carvana, which is kind of ironic because he explicitly bet against a Carvana bankruptcy by going balls deep into shares. Against his buy price of about $4, his $182,000 investment bagged him over 47,000 shares. His WallStreetBets colleagues mocked him for his botched post title and insane trade. However, the Allfather visual mod agreed with standard kill chain, reinforcing his disposition. By early February, Carvana had already climbed to $14, and that initial investment had self-yeeted to almost 650 grand, an enormous win. But was it enough to sell? No. For the next 4 months, Carvana meandered along as its risk of bankruptcy cooled down. But the real boom came in June, when CEO Ernest Garcia III told bears that his company would demolish Wall Street earnings expectations through its recovering strong business. The bankruptcy move was unofficially off the table. Bears stumbled over each other to get out of their shorts, and Carvana moved to a high of $26.09. Killchain's patience was rewarded, as his shares were now worth over $1.25 million. But was that enough? No. When the chachas on WallStreetBets discussed buying puts, our man knew the stock had more upside. Retail traders were still too bearish. Tacking on some calls expiring in 2025, Killdozer added serious leverage to his position. He held with iron hands as the stock nearly doubled again, putting his portfolio at $2.5 million. The peasants in the comments section were simply incapable of understanding how such gains could come about without FDs. Some users could not even read the chart as they were unable to identify share positions instead of calls. In light of this enormous gain, our hero shared his trading strategy so that others may copy. His criteria for stock selection centered on finding meme stocks that were down at least 98% with expected bankruptcy. Then wait until a capitulation day when everyone on WallStreetBets says it's dead. Then you buy as many shares as you can. These criteria concerned some users, as they believed others would end up buying shares of companies that were already actually bankrupt, and those traders would get stomped out as a result. And that's probably true. But in August, the big man flexed on the doubters by doing it again. When everyone discussed WeWork going bankrupt, which did indeed happen eventually, the killer put down 137 grand on over 900,000 shares at 15 cents each. On that day's dead cat bounce, WeWork nearly doubled on pure speculative momentum to 27 cents. Just in case his 2.5 million wasn't enough, the big man cashed out another 260 grand to his pile. And what did this Chad do with his wealth? He ran the most dangerous route possible at the Grand Canyon that the park rangers specifically tell no one to even attempt. But he did it anyway. Because if you're going to inverse WallStreetBets, you might as well inverse the park rangers too. It's unclear if Standard Kill Chain sold his Carvana shares, but if he were true to the expiration date on his calls, he's still holding. With Carvana now over $85, his shares would now be worth over $4 million. His calls, another 100 grand. But whether he cashed out earlier or holds to this day, there is no question about it. Standard Kill Chain is a true standard bearer for what our sub aims to be. Your Grace, I humbly offer you the crown of kings, so that you may be forever recognized as a champion among men. Wear it well and take your place on the throne of WallStreetBets.
Who wants to be king?
Thank you all for watching, and come join our free Discord, link down below.